Hey everybody, welcome back to TMS, or to virtual TMS anyway. I hope you all had a relaxing winter break and you're ready to get back after it here for the rest of the school year. So starting today up through about the end of the quarter, we'll be wrapping up our electricity unit with those final components that I sent home for you guys, the bug. Inside of this Google Classroom assignment, you'll find a PDF to assemble the bug before we can start doing any of our electricity experiments on it. The first step is bending the wings. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can bend these wings. I'm going to use a hair dryer. You could also run some really, really hot water over it to heat up the plastic. When you're heating up the plastic, you want to heat just the joint, like right here, this joint where it bends, and right here, this joint where it bends, and right here on the tail. So I've already bent this one. It took a while, but I took the hair dryer and I pointed it directly at that joint for probably 3 minutes on each one. And then after 3 minutes of heat, I took my thumb and pressed down. You can see my thumb and pressed down and made that bend. I did that for each wing and the tail. If you look at the angle of the wings here, let me straighten my computer out so you can see straight on. If you look at the angle of the wings here, that's what you're looking at, something like that. Inside the PDF document, there's also kind of an angle gauge to look at. You're shooting for about 15 degrees. And if you look at the back tail here, I also bent that down. Don't try bending these too early. Don't be impatient. Watch the clock. Put 3 minutes on the clock and get that heat right on the spot with the hair dryer. If you try bending it too early and the plastic is not hot, you'll crack it and break it. And I don't have any replacements of these for you. So please take your time and do a good job here. Okay, step B in the packet is attaching the battery box. This is the battery box right here. You want the wires facing up or facing towards this side of the bug body. So you can place that down. Now, if you look, there's 3 holes in the body. You want to use these holes that are nearest the tail when you attach your uh, battery box. So you'll need your screwdriver and the 2 shortest screws. They're about a 1/4 inch long, and you'll put that screw right through one of the pre-drilled holes in the battery box and into the hole that's already there for you in the bug body as well. Sorry for the poor camera angle here. It's the best I can do trying to record from my Chromebook here at home. So here's what you're looking at here then. As you can see, those 2 screws. Make note of the holes that those screws are in, and that this battery box is all the way down in those bottom 2 holes. There's 3 holes drilled in the base of the bug body, but you're only using the 2 that are closest to the tail. Go ahead and pause the video and complete this step. In the next step, we're attaching the switches. These are the switches here. You'll notice they have this tab. This is the actual switch itself. And that tab faces in on each, I guess, wing you'd call it, or antenna. So they should be turned so they face in like that. You'll need the 4 longer screws. They're about 3/4 of an inch long each, and your screwdriver to put those in. Remember, when you're putting the screws in, I should have mentioned it in the last step, is righty tighty and lefty loosey. So if you're trying to put screws in, you're turning the screwdriver toward the right. Now, since these holes are all pre-drilled for you in the plastic, the screws should go in pretty easily. If you're having a hard time putting them in, stand up so you can push down harder on the screwdriver as you put those in. Go ahead and pause the video here and put in all 4 screws for your switches. Pro tip. Some of you guys may be thinking, hey, I've got one of these. Why am I messing around with a hand screwdriver? Here's why. It's easy to put the screws in too far and strip them out of the base. So that means that the screw spins after it's all the way in, and then the screw will fall out and your components won't stay attached to the board. So even if you got one of these, Make sure you're using a regular screwdriver. It's much easier to control how deeply the screws go into the material. All right, next step, let's attach the tires to the motors. Now, quick word on these motors. Be careful with them throughout this entire process. You can see how we're in these tiny little tabs here. That's where the power hooks up to the motor. They're really easy to break off. If you break them off, again, you're out of luck. I do have a handful extra of these, but you got to come to TMS to pick them up. So be real gentle on them so you don't break your motor tabs. So I've given each of you guys a small little black tube like this. This is the tire material. Go ahead and take your scissors and cut that right in half. You should have a 1/2 inch piece, or a 1/4 inch, I should say, piece for each one. I made the kits a long time ago. I'm pretty sure I just gave you one piece. If there's 2 pieces, then you have 2 tires. If there's only one, go ahead and cut that in half with the scissors. So I'm going to take my scissors and just cut that right down the middle. Then here's the motor. This is the motor shaft. It's axle, like we learned about earlier. And you can just press that right down so it's even with the top of the motor shaft. And do that for both of your motors. Go ahead and pause the video here and take care of that step. All right, let's attach the motors to the plastic base. Now, this is a place where students tend to struggle because the motors press in really hard. If we look at the motor here, we have this metal shell. This is the outside of the motor. And then we have this plastic cap on the back. If you look at the side, there's these 2 little bent down tabs, one on each side. That's all that holds the motor together. So if you push too hard on, say, the bottom of the motor down here, the motor will pull right apart and then they're ruined. So you really need to be careful this step too. So here's the easiest way I've found to do it. Let me move the camera down a little bit so you can see. Place the motor with the tabs facing out. Just kind of place it so it's sitting in the hole there where it belongs. Then flip the whole thing over on the edge of the table like this. Once it's on the edge of the table, stand up so you have a little bit of force and use 2 thumbs, one on each side, and just gently push down like that. You should push down on the motor until there's just a little bit of metal showing above the bug, okay? Maybe an 1/8 inch or so. That's as deep as they need to go. So let's do this next one the same way. Place it on top like that with the tabs facing out. I'm going to hold that on there, flip it around, put it on the edge of the table, and then just push that down in there again. And try and make sure both the motors are sticking out about the same amount like that. Okay, so you can see the motors are both mounted in the top of the bug like that. Go ahead and pause the video here and take care of this step. In this step, we're going to bend the wire feelers for the bug. You'll need a pliers for this. I know I didn't warn you ahead of time about it, but they're pretty easy to come by. If you don't have a pliers, your neighbor's got one, your aunt, your uncle, grandma, grandpa, somebody's got one that you can borrow. We need to mark each feeler so they're 1 inch from the edge. So I'm going to place it right next to the ruler like this. Take my Sharpie marker and just place a little mark on it. So I marked 1 inch. I'll do the same thing on the next one where I mark 1 inch. Now you'll need your pliers. Take your pliers and I'm going to grip it so you can see that mark. So you can see the mark right there. So the pliers is just on the outside edge or the long side of the mark. See, there's the mark. It's right on the side of the pliers. And then the long part of the antenna is here. So the mark is on the short side sticking out and long sides out here. I'm holding it in my right hand like this. Take your thumb on the short side and just bend that short side over like that. So you can see I just bent it over like an angle like that. Now I can take it out of the pliers. So it looks like this. I'm just going to hold it, kind of pinch the corner, and I'm going to squeeze it down. So now it looks like kind of like a hook or like a tiny candy cane, like that. And the final step, use your finger to pinch the end right here. So right at the bottom, right here, I'm pinching that to hold it tight. Take my pliers. I'm going to fit the wire right inside of those grooves on the pliers on the end. And I'm just going to squeeze it down flat like that. So here's what you have then in the end is just a totally bent over antenna. Go ahead and do that for both of your antenna wires, and then I'll show the next step. Next, we need to put a curve in the antenna. So take a look at how I have the antenna here. I'm holding it so that the curve is facing up and the short end is on top. Take your pliers then, and I'm going to grip it right on the end of that second piece like that. So I'm gripping it. See how it's sitting straight up inside the pliers? Move my camera down here. Now, you can set it on the table. Hopefully this is a good angle for you. And then I'm going to bend it, keep it flat with the table, and just bend a kind of a curve into it. Take a look at that that document that's attached to the assignment to kind of get the general idea on the curve. But you can just ballpark. So that's what you're looking at now. You can see I have it bent up and over in a general curve shape like that. The main thing now you can see though is when the curve is facing up, this bend is flat. So you can see the bend is flat, curve faces up. Go ahead and match this curve on your next antenna, and then I'll show next steps. All right, but now you have two bent antennas that look pretty much exactly the same if you were to hold them next to each other. You have some blue tubing. If I remember right, I gave you one 2-inch long piece. You need to cut that in half so you have two 1-inch long pieces of blue tube. You can cut that with the scissors. On your bug, fit that blue tube right over the top of each of your switch tabs. Should look like that. It's fitting over each tab. Then take your antenna and slide that between the blue tube and the switch tab. Like that. You should have one antenna going out this way. Slide the other one in between the blue plastic and the switch tab, and it faces out the other way, like that. And you're all set. Feel free to watch this video over if you need to, or watch certain steps over, or reach out to me on Hangouts. I'm happy to help. Notice that I have not put the batteries in yet. Don't put your batteries in yet either. And then when you're not using your bug, make sure your batteries are out of the bug. It's easy for these bugs to short circuit, and they can end up melting some of your plastic components and certainly wearing your batteries down. So make sure there's no batteries in here yet. Stay tuned to Google Classroom for our next assignment. It's going to be the beginning of using our alligator clips to make some circuits on the bug.